Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Mid-Table Crisis with me, Tom Patrick.
And me, Simon Cross. Now,
Lovely stuff.
I know it's lovely stuff. Well, it's always nice to be back. Now, this week we took a week off, as the domestic game did for international football. We perused, took in those obscure games, enjoyed various emerging teams coming through on the international circuit. But we're going to focus mainly on what you guys know and love. We're going to focus on England's performances. We're going to focus a little bit on the return of something that's happening. Well, it's just finished happening right now, and that's the new season of the Champions League. And we're going to cast our eye elsewhere, aren't we, Tom? There's some other things we're going to look into today.
Yeah, I know the Forgotten Footballer feature is becoming more and more popular, and we've got a lovely one for you today. So you can look forward to that as well. And also, regular listeners will know of my love of the city of Nottingham. So we'll also be talking about that a little bit. But yeah, to kick us off, Simon, you mentioned the Champions League. We are recording on a Tuesday night, and it's just all finished, hasn't it? And what results have caught your eye?
Well, it's interesting to see that the champions of La Liga have actually lost their first game in the Champions League. Atletico Madrid fell 3-2 away to Olympiacos. I mean, admittedly, away in Greece is a hard game, but it's still one you'd have fancied them for. So that's a turn up for the round, in my opinion, thus far.
Yeah, I mean, I was keeping my eye on it earlier, and it was 3-1 for a while. I think Griezmann pulled one back for Atletico Madrid with about 10 or 15 minutes to go. But I mean, that's really going to be. It's not a good start at all. I know it's only one game in, but I mean, Olympiacos traditionally don't get that far. Usually they just make it out of the groups and then they get knocked out. So to start off with a win is great for them. But Atletico Madrid, it is going to be difficult for them with the La Liga and Champions League going on at the same time. And, they're going to be pushed constantly in the league by Real Madrid and Barcelona. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one works out for them. Good to see Mitroglou amongst the scorers for Olympiacos as well, because he obviously didn't have a very good time at Fulham. And I think he's a good player. It's just that he was never really given a chance at Fulham.
He was sort of messed about by Felix Magath, really, in that regard. And it was kind of, is he worth the money? Is he not worth the money? A lot of that hung over his head for a long time. I think he's vindicating that he is a striker of quality. And, he would have had a good run in the Premier League if he was given the time and if he had the fitness.
Yeah, I think it was just the fact that it was too late. If he'd have been bought over, if he'd been there for the whole season, he could have found the time to hit his form and maybe sort it out. But I think the reason he was brought in was because they were in trouble. They needed a proven goal scorer, so they got a guy who'd been getting about as many goals as games as is in his native Greece. And unfortunately, he was just not quite. He was never quite near full fitness. I thought at Fulham, so he really struggled. So yeah, that was bad to see. Yeah, back on form.
That's good. It's good for him, proving himself, as I say, in that regard. One other thing that threw me off was Galatasaray drawing at home to Anderlecht. That was a surprise. They had to get a last-minute equaliser to get that result as well.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about Greece being a difficult place to go. Turkey's not too good either, I hear. I mean, well done to Anderlecht because, they've maybe in the 70s and the 80s they were quite a force in European football, but these days not quite so much. Belgian football's taken a bit of a battering on the domestic stage, so it's really good point for them. But they must be devastated that they couldn't snatch a win. With Galatasaray scoring in literally the 90th minute.
It's going to feel like a chance missed rather than the wonderful opportunity that it was for them in that regard. I do get what you're saying there, and I know it does tug at your heartstrings that Belgian football club scene has declined a bit, but in that regard, it just proves that you can't underestimate any Champions League team. I mean, Liverpool laboured to their win tonight over Ludogorets.
It was 2-1 in the end, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, and Ludogorets are not exactly the best team in their group. I mean, admittedly, it took a while to get going. It was a slow burner. I mean, all three goals come in the last 8 to 9 minutes. But I think if Liverpool have any real ambitions of winning the thing, which, Gerrard says they do, they should be winning games a little bit easier than that. They really did need to win their first game and get off to a good start.
Well, it was a last-minute Gerrard penalty that bailed them out, really. So that shows you I can't keep relying on that kind of fortune forever. So,
Yeah, good to see Balotelli scoring though. It's his first goal, and I think he scored I think he scored for 4 different clubs in the Champions League now.
I believe both Milan's, Man City, and now Liverpool. Yes.
Yeah, so it was good to see that. Well, he didn't have a good game against Villa at all at the weekend, but he's starting to find his feet a little bit back in English football.
Mm. I mean, once he gets used to the team he's in, I think he'll be a great signing. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But that's true of all of the signings that have played their first club game recently, after moving.
I wouldn't say all of them. Some of them have really hit the ground running, but no, I understand what you mean. I mean, with most players, strikers especially, and coming from another country, you've got to give them a little bit of time for them to find their feet, and I'm sure he will get that time. I mean, he's already shown what he can do at Manchester City, so he's definitely going to be able to be allowed to flourish, I'd say.
That's true. And in that regard, he's going to, as I say, naturally bed in. We've seen what he can do and what he's capable of, so I wouldn't worry about it in that regard. So, as I say, I know it's the first game, well, literally the first half of the first round we're recording after. And I'm loathed, well, we did it for the Premier League, and even though it's tough, and it can look really ridiculous in this regard, do you have a favourite for this year's Champions League? Is there one team that's just screaming out to you more than the others?
I think if Ancelotti can get Real Madrid superstars all firing, then I don't see many teams that will be able to hold back that tidal wave. I mean, they won 5-1 tonight, and Basel had an old favourite of mine, Walter Samuel, in defence. He's getting on a bit. He's 36.
I didn't realise he was still going.
Yeah, Inter Milan let him go over the summer, along with a few other legends, including Cambiasso and Zanetti. He's gone to Switzerland for his Champions League football, and him and his team were outclassed today. I mean, if you just have a look at some of the scorers, in 6 minutes, Bale, Ronaldo and Rodriguez scored. It says a lot. I mean, when you've got those three pulling the strings and finishing off the moves, it's going to be incredibly difficult for anyone to stop them, I'd say. Bayern Munich are, of course, another big team. They are without Robben and I think Ribéry as well. So we'll see how they turn out. But it might be an obvious one, but I'd say definitely Real Madrid look good.
Those two are always worth mentioning, of course, in that regard. I see why you've gone for those choices. I mean, Barcelona, they've sort of laboured to a start in La Liga, so the sheen's come off them a little bit, but if any team can click through the gears, it's a team with that level of quality in it. Also, Juventus, I mean, you can never rule them out. I mean, I know they're fading somewhat, and then there's a couple of things. Is Arturo Vidal's knee holding up? Is it going to hold up? But, they've still got all the tools to succeed, so I wouldn't rule them out of giving it a run.
I'm not sure what you said about. I think Barcelona are running away the league, aren't they? And Madrid aren't.
No, they've had a bit of a problem, Barcelona. I'd say they've laboured to it. They've had some last-minute. It's had to be last-minute winners. It's not comfortable. It's not simplistic for them at the moment. It is a labour. They are, going through the gears, as I, refer to again in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, what I was going to say as well is that Real Madrid are actually struggling more so, I'd say, because Real Madrid aren't getting the results. They lost to, I think they lost to Atletico the other day. So, whereas Barcelona might not be finding it too easy, Real Madrid are finding it even more difficult. because in that league you've got to be winning virtually every game apart from it's understandable against the Real Madrids and the Barcelonas.
Yeah.
You've got to make allowances, but Real Madrid lost at home to Atletico, so that really it's not gone well so far. The La Liga, and Real Sociedad beat Madrid 4-2, so it's going to be a long, hard season for them. But as to as we were saying, it is very early on, and it is going to be. There is a lot of football left to be played.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of football to be played, and of course, you can't really read too much into just the first 3 games, but it's not the pristine, polished performances we're used to. Is my point? Is what we've made.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Chelsea have got a good lot of depth in their squad. When you think that Czech's going to get his first start in tomorrow's Champions League game, they do have the ability to rotate the squads quite thoroughly. So that might come in handy for them.
I mean, the problem with them, I'd say, is still in the striking positions. Drogba should be playing tomorrow night. Obviously, he's a great player, but he is 36, and he's not going to be able to play every week. Diego Costa as well, of course, who's going great guns, and they've got him as well. Apart from that, not too much, I'd have to say. So as long as Diego Costa stays fit and Drogba can still play at a good level considering his age, they'll be okay. But if either of them starts to slow down a little bit or gets an injury, then I think they're going to have a lot of problems.
A lot like what people were saying about Liverpool last year with Suarez and Sturridge, and now with especially with Sturridge on his own in that regard. I mean, Balotelli sort of allayed that, but those were the concerns they were having in that regard. Now, you mentioned Costa. Of course, he's got up and firing in the Premier League. You've mentioned he's going great guns. Him and Fabregas, 2 examples of signings that Chelsea have made just to further strengthen their already stellar lineup. And they've already settled in well in terms of the Premier League, so...
Yeah, I think Fabregas has got 6 assists already, and Diego Costa's got 7 goals. 7 goals in 6 games, I think it is. And I mean, that is extraordinary. I think it took Fernando Torres 43 games to get 7 goals for Chelsea. So, I mean, we were speaking earlier about you need to give players a bit of time to bed in.
Yeah.
Usually that's correct, but immediately Diego Costa's just grabbed the Premier League by the scruff of its neck and slapped it around like a 14-year-old Thai prostitute. So Chelsea are really a team to be feared in the Premier League, and I'd say in the Champions League as well. But as I say, it is all very fragile. If one of Drogba or Diego Costa gets injured, that puts a hell of a lot of pressure on the other striker.
Oh yeah,
and there's very little in the
reserves in the tank.
Yeah, in the reserve. Yeah, because I mean, they've got great midfielders and attacking midfielders who can score goals, but as we saw last season, you can't rely on them.
Oh no, that's true. And in that regard, they do look a little bit lightweight in certain positions, Chelsea, and we've mentioned that they're going along in the Premier League. I'd say in that regard, another team, I mean, I know we seem to be segueing quite seamlessly this one, another team that seems a little bit lightweight, especially now we've had some notable retirees, is of course our beloved national team, which of course did play twice in the international break. And we saw a whole host of new faces in there. We're going for a new dawn. What did you make of our performances out there?
Well, I saw both of the games. I thought the game against Norway, while it was a bit lackluster, there was a bit too much. It wasn't like we'd lost 5-0 to a minnow. It was just that we'd looked, understandably, we'd looked like we were a little bit. We didn't really get our third gear, but it was a friendly preparing for our first, qualifying game in the Euros. So
and that toughest. Let's not forget.
The second toughest team in that group is probably Slovenia. As much as I love Slovenia, They are not a world force yet. Not yet. Wait until Etienne Villaconjas hit his peak. So it was very important to go to Switzerland and win. I think that's the last time they were beaten at home was about 4 years ago by England. So, and a great win, and a 2-0 as well. It wasn't just like a 90th minute penalty or anything. It was confident, and it was very good to see Welbeck on the score sheet. Yeah, considering that he's had his critics, myself included. But I mean, I was happy with that. But what did you think about it?
Well, I think we read too much into friendlies, as England fans and in general, of course, speaking in generalities.
Yeah, the media definitely do.
I mean, there was some guy, I can't remember who it was, on my social media saying, Fabian Delph's now starting for the England team, I officially give up. And it's like, look, we've got to take looks at these players, and as I mentioned on the previous podcast, Fabian Delph is a decent Premier League player, so he's worth a look. And that's what the friendlies are for. It's like, oh no, we don't like him, he's, from X and Y club, or he's like, just okay. It's like, look, sometimes you have to take a look at these players. That's what friendlies are for. And I think people do forget that sometimes.
Yeah, and it turns out that Delph actually played all right. I mean, he did get himself booked early on. I remember listening to one commentator describe him as like a kid who's had too much fizzy pop, which was quite apt. But no, I mean, Delph, maybe he's not going to be the next Steven Gerrard, but he might be the next Fabian Delph, if you know what I mean. He's going to be, he's going to be an option, and I'd rather have people like Fabian Delph getting a bit of experience and trying, seeing how he handles the international stage, rather than just giving James Milner another run out, or someone of his ilk. So yeah, it was good to see, and it was good to see that we got the results. We got a 1-0 and a 2-0. Obviously, the 1-0 was friendly, but.
And of course, we're giving a bit of a trial out to John Stones, so we're looking at options, which is something we never did before.
Look into youth.
I mean, all we need now is Micah Richards to light it up in Italy for Fiorentina, and hopefully he can get some more caps.
Oh, well, that'd be the dream, really, wouldn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, it would indeed. I mean, I've always said he's should have had a fairer crack of the whip at City. I mean, I'm glad he's moved on now, so hopefully we'll get to see him get a chance. Same as Rodwell.
Yeah. Well, I think with Rodwell, it was a different situation. With Micah Richards, he was there already. He was getting the appearances. He was racking them up. He was getting into the England squad and the under-21s before that, and it was just the timing was off. I think he had something like a 5-year contract, and the shift, the earthquake of the tidal wave of these players coming in happened sort of halfway through that, so there wasn't much he could do. Whereas with Rodwell, knew he was going into that environment and knew that he would have to really pull up some trees if he wanted to get some games.
Yeah.
But I mean, for both of them, it's good that they've moved on.
So yeah, that's what I mean. We're looking at different players. It's gonna be like this in friendlies for a while. We're just gonna have to accept that. I know there's a low turnout, but that just means tickets will be cheaper for a change. Hopefully, like the FA will recognise that. Like that, there's going to be low turnouts and try and remedy it with cheaper ticket prices, which means seeing a national team won't be ruinously expensive. Especially now we're based in London, which is ruinously expensive to get to in most cases.
Yeah.
So, as I say, I like that we're trying something different, and we've got our toughest game out of the way with a win, and other teams in our group drop points as well, so we've got a bit of a cushion in that regard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, good to see and all. Welbeck for me, although he's not going to be my first choice ever, it was good to see that he can do the business against a good, strong defensive team. So yeah, well done to Roy as well. I think he came out best out of everyone in that after that game.
Well, he's a man that knows Switzerland very well. Let's face it.
Yeah, he did get them to the Euros. I think in '96. So yeah,
he knows the country, he knows the style, he knows the country.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I think you could say he instilled the kind of the footballing ideals that are still used today.
Mm.
I know he's very well thought of there, and also in Inter Milan as well. A lot of people might not know, but Roy Hodgson did manage Inter Milan, and he's a big friend of the family who owns the club.
So there you are. So bringing a little bit of continental knowledge to hopefully our England team going forward. That's never a bad thing. Certainly better than what Harry Redknapp would have brought to the role.
Yeah, trying to Gareth Bale a big bag full of money if he'd come and play on the left wing. I mean, I would say that's quite libelous, but I don't really care. I'm sure Harry Redknapp doesn't listen. That was one. I do remember a couple of days ago, Tony Fernandez, who's QPR's owner, saying that Harry Redknapp would not be tempted by any advances from England. No one's asking him. No one from England's going to be saying, "Do you know who we need in this situation?" Harry Redknapp. You know, he's had his time. You know, he was considered for the job. He didn't get it. There was probably a reason for that. There was probably a few reasons for that. So yeah, Roy's the right man. Let's see what he can do.
And just take it from there. That's all we can hope for.
Yeah, he's got a great start. So good job, Roy.
Indeed, hats off to you. And who knows? Maybe there's a new initiative, which means that the next England star will come from a city close to your heart, Tom. I believe it's fair to say, isn't it? I mean, it's a city I've frequented many a time, mainly because you were living there.
Yeah. In fact, for about 6 months, I was living right on the doorstep of one of the great establishments of British football, Nottingham Forest Football Club, twice winners of the Champions League, or the European Cup as it was known back then. Yeah, I lived in Nottingham for about 3.5 years, all told. Took in games at both the county ground and the city ground. And Notts County, of course, they're famous as being the oldest football league club. You know, they're over 150 years old.
Mm.
I think it was 1862, but please correct me if I am wrong.
I'm sure our listeners will.
Yeah, and they've been, Nottingham has been selected as the City of Football. And Simon, can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, what does it mean to be the City of Football is a good question. Now, this is an initiative that was set up by Sport England, and there were like 22 bids. 19 fell by the wayside, and it came down to Manchester, Portsmouth, and of course our eventual winners, Nottingham. Now, the winner will receive 1.6 million in National Lottery funding to run a 2-year program to encourage more people to take up the game. Especially those from ethnic backgrounds, women, 14 to 25-year-olds. It's got a bit of an onus on in that regard in terms of getting more youngsters to take up the game and make sure they play grassroots football, which is no bad thing. And I looked at the options there. Manchester, Portsmouth, and of course the eventual winners, Nottingham. Now Manchester's got 2 very big clubs in it already. It's got Soccer City, based just in the near enough in the centre as well. It's got a really nice cutting-edge facility. Obviously, not all facilities in Manchester are subject to the same luxuries or team backing, but there's already an established base there. Portsmouth, it's a decent-sized city, don't get me wrong. It's got a fairly big catchment area, and football in coastal regions, especially in the south and southwest, is a bit of a problem because there aren't many clubs. Like, if you don't get in at one club, you're not really going to get in anywhere. There's no second chance saloon as there is in more congested areas geographically. But Nottingham's, in a fairly centralised location, being in the East Midlands. It does have 2 clubs. It's got the framework which I think would benefit best from this money, which is why I think it was chosen as the winner. Of course, I could be wrong, there could be other reasons, but that's just my view on the matter in that regard.
Okay. What I will say, having lived in Nottingham for such a long time, is you've got the 2 main clubs as well, Nottinghamshire in general as a county is a real hotbed of football because I had a friend who played for a Nottinghamshire club, Ilkeston, and he also went on loan to Hucknall. So there's a lot of clubs. There's Mansfield as well, of course, that are just outside Nottingham. So that's 3 clubs in the league, and Hucknall, Ilkeston, and a few others as well. Alfreton's nearby. There's plenty of clubs that players can go to. In fact, you find that clubs like Ilkeston quite often, they take the youth intake that didn't quite make it at County and Forest. So that's good. It's very much a football city. Everyone supports somebody, and everyone hates Derby, which is good. And
well, of course, with several Derby County friends, I must play the other side of the coin here and say, they're just as entitled to hate back. And as a Derby County advocate, boo to you, sir. Boo to you.
Well, I was in Derby the weekend, and while I had a good time, I was felt up by a homeless woman. So mixed reviews there for Derby. It's a city, but no, I've got nothing against Derby County in general. To be honest, they've done very well over the last couple of years, and I hope they do well in the league this season. But yeah, Nottingham. It's interesting you were talking about encouraging women and people from minority ethnic backgrounds, because I did play quite a bit myself. In fact, I am the proud owner of a I'm not sure what division we were in, but it was a winners medal in the Power League Nottingham football leagues. That may have something to do with the fact we had a couple of lads who were semi-pro. And
I was going to say, it's more than we got whenever we were playing in the same team. So more power to you.
Yeah, I mean, we never had players of exactly the same caliber. And of course, I did do my knee about halfway through, so I was a bit of a passenger the second half of the season. But I did notice that there weren't too many Asian players there, and they did tend to stick together. That if there was an Asian player, it was usually in an Asian team. And this is for a city with a reasonable Asian population. Not quite the same as, say, Birmingham or Leicester, but still significant. And you don't really see that reflected on the football pitches. And to a certain extent, the same with black players. So if we can get more ethnic minorities involved, which is, what the idea is behind this initiative, then so much the better.
Well, in terms of professional football, there's not really that many Asian, if any, Asian players in the league, really.
Well, when you talk about sort of West Asian, if you're talking East Asian, obviously, if you talk about Korea and Japan and places like that, but even so less than you might like. But yeah, the world's really crying out for English football's crying out for the first Indian or Pakistani superstar. I think the closest we've ever got is Michael Chopra, who
is not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination in terms of the top level.
Yeah, he's also not that Indian. He's half Indian, and he sort of did flop a little bit at Newcastle. But I do want to just quickly. I know what some of our readers might wonder why I'm talking about this, but I did see the other day a little bit about the Indian Premier League that's starting up, and it looks mental. David James, Freddie Ljungberg.
No, I didn't know about those two.
David James, I think he's in a player-coach role. David James is the kind of person who's never going to retire. And Freddie Ljungberg as well, who seems to be willing to play for a Mars bar these days. Basically, the Indian Premier League is going to be trying to harness the huge potential of a country like India. I mean, if India was into football, then they would be a force to be reckoned with. Obviously, at the moment, it's not really. It's well behind cricket in terms of popularity. It's going to take a lot of time. But if they're laying the groundwork now, in a few decades' time, they could be a real force.
And do you reckon that will have an impact on Asian participation in the UK? Just to bring it back a little bit on topic.
Definitely. If young Asian players have got role models to look to, people that they can identify with, then yeah, that's going to make a huge difference. At the moment, people want to be the next, Sachin Tendulkar. They
Hmm.
don't want to be. They don't want to be the next.
Nicholas Anelka, who another name in the Indian Premier League.
Oh yeah, he's well. I think I'm not. Anelka, to a certain extent, brings it down a little bit because he.
Well,
I said, well,
still,
no, still a good player, yeah. But I mean, I said Lundberg would play for a Mars bar. I think Anelka would pay for just a big sack of money. Um, but yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. So when that kicks off, we will keep you informed and let you know how it goes because that is going to be utterly mad.
oh yeah, especially with a 41-year-old Robert Pires knocking about for Goa. That's something I really want to see how he gets on.
Yeah, that's an odd one as well. Not many people know about Robert Pires. He's actually he's not actually that French. He was born in France to a Spanish mother and a Portuguese father. So I'm not surprised he's in Goa. I'm surprised he's still playing, considering that when he was at Aston Villa, although it's still a great player, he clearly slowed down a lot and didn't
Oh,
have the
he
stamina
did
anymore.
not have the pace.
But I think he's going to be having the time of his life down in India, isn't he? He's going to be. I mean, Goa is a bit of a resort kind of place anyway. He's just going to be knocking balls around. He's going to have a couple of little 21-year-old midfielders to do always running for him, and he's going to be creaming 40-yard passes and then standing back and admiring. He is not going to track back for toffee. So that's going to be.
That's going to be interesting. As I said, that's the thing with the Indian Premier League. I mean, the only equivalent I can think of in terms of a similar project is the Chinese Super League. And it's in China, they are into football, but they're into foreign football. They're into us at the Premier League. They're into La Liga. The domestic games never really taken off, despite the names of one, Nicholas Anelka, who was over there for a time.
Drogba, of course, as
Drogba,
well.
of course.
Yeah.
There are some others as well, but we won't go into too fine or granular detail there. But as I say, because of the populations, that's why they're, if you can convert them to a successful footballing nation, you have a large piece of the puzzle already in place, hence why the US is doing so well. But we've covered that in great detail already.
Yeah, but I
But,
mean, yeah, as you were saying, like if that's the reason they're doing it in India, that's the reason they're doing it in China. The population. If China and India were interested in football, that's
well, they are.
I mean,
Interested in domestic football.
yeah, if they were interested in domestic football, that's 2 billion people we're talking about. So yeah, that would
That's TV money right there.
yeah, that would be interesting. So yeah, we hope that kicks off.
As I say, we'll give it a look, and as I say, we'll look into finding who our preferable team will be, and me and Tom will each back a team and see how we get on in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing I do like, I've always been a bit of a sucker for the player that you were like, you think, where is he now? What's he doing these days?
And the Indian Premier League is going to be full of those, aren't they? Isn't
Going
it?
to be full of those. Yeah, you might even call them forgotten footballers, wouldn't you, Simon?
That's a name that would ring a bell in that regard. Yeah.
And speaking of forgotten footballers, as I said earlier, we have got an absolute cracker for you this evening. Simon, would you like to introduce the big bald hitman?
Oh, well, you've given a little bit of a clue. Thankfully, it's not Guess Who in that regard, because that would be a mental concept to play through the medium of podcasting. But it's a typical, it's a man who spent most of his time in the UK for his career, but he's forayed abroad, and it's Thomas Gravesen, the famous Danish hardman, when I can say that correctly. That's famous Danish hardman. Try saying that 10 times fast, listeners.
No, I'm not going to try. But yeah, I mean, if some of the slightly younger listeners maybe don't really remember him, I mean, he did retire a little while ago, but he was probably best known in the UK for his time at Everton, I'd say. Obviously, he was a Danish international, but hardman midfielder is the best way to describe him. Not just simply a thug,
No.
but he was a very, very good midfielder in terms of his passing, his work rate, his tackling, but he was more of a destroyer than creator overall, I'd say.
Oh, he was the stereotypical ball-winning midfielder. There's no doubt
Yeah,
about that. I mean,
he
he retired, well, retired in 2008, well, 2009 he retired. He retired internationally in 2008. He didn't hang around too much in club football beyond that point. So he's not, a recent player by any stretch of the imagination, in terms of how interchangeable football is sometimes. But
mhm.
in some ways, he's enjoyed just as much an illustrious retirement as he has a career. I mean, ever since his retirement, he's managed to build up an investment portfolio of nearly £80 million, and now he's living out in Vegas with his model girlfriend. So he's having a great time in that regard.
He's loving it. He's only 38. I didn't realise he did. He was probably 33 when he retired.
Mm.
30.
As I say, he had just been released by Celtic, so I think perhaps his portfolio was up to the point now. He's like, you know what, I am 33. I can, just walk away, and I've got, something to do.
He had a glittering career at Real Madrid and Celtic. Scored a hat-trick at Celtic. These were the days when playing for Celtic was a bit like being a year 11 and playing against the year 7s. He did have a great old time there. But yeah, 5 years at Everton, contracted, and then he did have a loan there at the end of his career as well. So he really tore it up for Everton, moved on to Real Madrid for a season, and then enjoyed a lovely old time at Celtic. And that's how we remember his career, his club career really.
Mm.
But also he had 8 good years at Denmark as well. He had 66 caps, 5 goals,
Which,
and did
not a bad return for a ball-winning midfielder.
ball-winning, powerful shots, but he wasn't always too keen to get forwards. I think it's fair to say that he he could occasionally play as a deep line playmaker depending on who else was in the team.
Mm.
But yeah, he did used to play central midfield with the beast that is Stig Tofting, and Stig Tofting is basically a bit like Thomas Gravesen, but smaller, harder, and more Danish. Bit of a nutcase, has been to prison. I mean, 2 of the hardest footballers I can think of, Gravesen and Tofting, and they used to play together. So that was you wouldn't want to be the creative midfielder. Put it that way. You wouldn't want to be the creative midfielder playing against those 2. But also a nice guy as well. You mentioned a little bit about his portfolio. Where is he now at the moment?
He's out living in Las Vegas, having the time of his life, I'd say.
Well, fair play to the lad. Fair play to him. He's also got a younger brother as well, Peter Gravesen, who started off at the same club as him, Vedgley, a Bold club. But his career didn't exactly take the same, didn't hit the same heights.
No, and I hope it's not one of those situations where Peter only sees Thomas at like family gatherings and just looks at him like, always in it, always going to be in his shadow, that sort of thing. I hope it, just take it on the chin and just enjoy your brother's success. I know that's what Phil does with Gary Neville.
Well, I'd say as long as he can hop over on a jet to Las Vegas and see his brother, he probably doesn't mind too much if he fixes him up with a nice place.
Exactly. And it's good in that regard. I mean, with some of our forgotten footballers, especially last week's, it got a little bit bleak in terms of what they were doing at the moment. It's nice to give a little bit of a success story and prove there is life after the game for footballers, something which a lot of people have struggled with.
Yeah. I do want to just give you a few little tidbits about Gravesen. The first time I really remember him being talked about on a world stage was 2002 World Cup. Denmark actually did quite well. He scored 2 goals in a qualifying game. it's reported that Mike Tyson asked for his shirt and wore it while he was staying in Denmark.
Well, when Mike
And
Tyson admires what you're doing.
yeah, to be honest, you could say Gravison was the white Mike Tyson without the rape charges. And
Oh, you've been watching those American talk show videos again, haven't you?
well, he was charged for rape.
He was, and he did spend time in prison, but you don't bring it up around him. It's what we've learned from the internet in the last week.
Well, I don't think he's in any at the moment, so I might just get away with that.
Just.
Well, yeah, it's and then he played in all 4 games at the 2002 World Cup. So
Well, all 4 games they were in, yeah.
yeah, it's good. It's good that he's finally. Well, it's good that he was finally recognised. As actually being a bit more of a player than just a hack and slash man when he got his transfer to Real Madrid, and he got that season where he could basically play amongst some of the best players in the world. So, and he also appeared in the film Goal as well, so he's got acting chops. So yeah, good man, and good Gravison.
Good Gravison indeed, especially well, I don't want to be that guy, but he only really got his chance at Real Madrid, I think, because of the Makelele selling.
Possibly, but they did need that kind of player, and they thought he was good enough. And to be fair, I think he was there for 1 season, but he played something like 35 times, something like that.
I think it was 35 games over the course of 2 seasons. But
I'm not sure if he was there for the whole of 2 seasons, but yeah, I do understand what you mean there, yeah.
But, here's to you, Thomas Gravison. You're certainly living it up. You've lived one of our dreams, and now you're living another. Live it like, rich life in Vegas. Who could ask for anything else?
Mm-hmm. And a model wife, girlfriend as well. That's always good. I've sampled that a little bit myself, but it's not for me. But no, I mean, it's each their own. So yeah, Thomas Gravison is our Forgotten Footballer of the Week. And we will, of course, be having another lovely gentleman of his ilk next week. And next week, I'm afraid, you will be without my dulcet tones, but you will be hearing the strident voices of a couple of young ruffians. And, of course, Simon will be there as well, won't you, Simon?
Of course. I mean, it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, we've heard them before on the show. They were on last week. They helped us out with our transfer special. And they loved it so much, they were most insistent. They came back, which is, well, what further can you say in that regard? And
well, once you go black, you can't go back. I think
which I'm sure is relevant in some way.
Yeah, it definitely is. We've got to celebrate the first white Forgotten Footballer as well. So well done to us.
That's true. Yeah. So, yeah, join us next week when, well, I'll say us, it'll be me and my 2 erstwhile guests, one Mr. James Ison and one Mr. Danny Hill, as we tackle football in the best that we can, just in Tom's absence. But, Tom's not going permanently, don't worry. He's just off on a jaunt to watch a different kind of football out there in the good old US of A, aren't you, Tom?
I am indeed. Go Tigers. GEAU Tigers.
And on that bombshell, it's time to say goodbye from me, Simon Cross.
And from me, Tom Patrick. Take care of yourselves, listeners.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.